Hello and welcome to Reaching for the Moon, presented by Everglades Moon Local Council, Florida chapter of Covenant of the Goddess. COG supports individual works by its covens, members, and local councils. It's a vibrant network of a myriad of Wiccan and witchy resources, religious support, friendships, service opportunities, and more. To find out more, visit our website, emlc.net, our Facebook page, facebook.com/Everglades Moon, or Twitter, @EMLC Tweets. Hi, this is Serona, and this is episode 7 of Reaching for the Moon, Mabon 2014. We're back! I'd like to introduce you to Lady Bridget of Witch and Famous Coven, one of the founding covens of Everglades Moon Local Council.
Hi, it's good to be back. Where have we been? Well, life happens. As you probably can imagine, running a podcast is a little time consuming, and so sometimes things get in the way, and even with the best of intentions, we're not always able to follow through on what we want to do. But now there's 2 of us, so we're hoping to just move forward into the future with upcoming podcasts.
Welcome aboard. In this episode, we're going to do a book review by Kasha. The book is called Marry Meet Again, Lessons, Life, and Love on the Path of a Wiccan High Priestess by Deborah Lipp. Followed by Canu teaching his workshop, The Old Ones, Let Us Sing to Them. This was recorded during our Turning the Tide celebration from December 2013. Now, this was recorded outside, so there is a bit of background noise. We've done our best to remove it. Just bear with us. It's an amazing workshop, and it's worth it. We have tons of fun. Finally, we'll hear Mother of the Corn, a song by Aradia from her album Songs for All Seasons. Enjoy!
I just finished a sweet book by Deborah Lipp called Marry Meet Again, Lessons, Life, and Love on the Path of a Wiccan High Priestess. This is published by Llewellyn Publishing in 2013. It's available in paperback. It's a little over 300 pages long, and it's also available in Kindle downloadable format. This book reads like a conversation over tea with your priestess. Deborah has been a figure in the pagan community since before her Gardnerian initiation in 1981, and she's known as a high priestess, a former wife of the late Isaac Bonowitz, a speaker at conferences and festivals, and author of countless craft-related books. She's one of the many who paved the way for us to practice freely and publicly today. It's an autobiography of sorts, and Deborah takes the reader through many portions of her life, from time as a teen discovering nature in the woods of Massachusetts, to her seeking and introduction to Gardnerian craft in New York and New Jersey, her marriage to Isaac Bonowitz, and her involvement in the Druid organization ADF, traumatic times in her life and how they affected her, and what she's doing today, and lots in between. It's not a tell-all book, but she does talk about the people that she's known and the places that she's been, and there's a lot. And sprinkled throughout the book are chants and spells, descriptions of rituals. The high priestess is always teaching. Reading this book, as I said, feels like you're sitting down with a cup of tea with someone who you've known for a long time, a dear friend. A time when stories are told and the heart is revealed. I felt as if I was getting to know Deborah through the book, and was happy for the peek inside the life of one of America's many influential priestesses. If you're looking for one person's view of the craft from the 70s today, seen through the eyes of within, then I'd recommend this book by Deborah Lipp. Marry Meet Again, it's called. Lessons, Life, and Love on the Path of a Wiccan High Priestess.
Welcome to my workshop. It's called The Old Ones, Let Us Sing to Them, because it's about ritual invocations and chants. It is one of the things that we all come equipped for somehow, right? A bunch of us were singing down at the river. We heard Mama Gina. We were probably humming along, tapping a foot, something like that, right? It is a part of all of us that we can express ourselves, even if we need to do so in the privacy of our own altars at home, to the gods. And they love it. Even better, if you're putting on a ritual with a small group or in public for other people, the emphasis that you can get, the energy that you can raise, and the ability to really draw the attention of the gods, the elements, and the other things you might work with in ritual circle is really enhanced by singing. It's not something you need to do for every piece of your ritual, but I can tell you it has a really nice place in ritual, and it's one of the skills and things that is almost the most overlooked in terms of the development of being priests and priestesses in the craft. We all love to hear and receive both new and old pagan standards, but I would really doubt that almost any of us that have ever planned a ritual or helped plan a ritual didn't stop at one point and say, the one thing I didn't do really was actually decide on what chant I wanted to use for this thing. Does anybody have a chant? Anybody, right? So we've all faced that kind of time where we're at this crossroads all of a sudden, whether it's during ritual planning or even right when we're about to begin ritual, kind of going, oh wait, what was I going to do? So the reason I'm putting this workshop on is to help us all be a little aware that being able to write and create and perform even very simple chants and invocations for ritual is a really powerful part of ritual potentially, and is one of the really good skills that you can bring to your groups, your community, or even just your private home and your own observance, however you feel comfortable doing it. The basics of this workshop are, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I've written a few things. I'm going to perform them for you to the best of my ability, which isn't always great, but we'll see how it goes. And to help show you both in terms of concept and action, how something like that can develop. And then ask you guys to do that yourself as well. I have index cards and pens that I've brought, and part of the time spent in this workshop is going to be time that you are spending individually or with one or two other people working on writing something potentially for ritual use. Not necessarily for public use, but for your ritual use. Because there is nothing like the pressure of an actual time frame and a little bit of preparation in the right space to be able to create something like this. When I first came into the craft, I had an incredibly hard time speaking in ritual. Actually, I had it was a blockage in my throat. I'd come to know a few people who were Wiccans. They invited me to their circle for the first few times. They didn't really ask me to do anything much. It was great. I could sit there, I could watch, I could get a sense of the energy, I could learn how things are kind of supposed to work and what people do, face different directions and put up their hands. And then I went to one and they said, "You're going to call a quarter." And I went, oh, really? I've seen people do it. It wasn't that complicated, but it's probably a more common experience than just mine, that all of a sudden you sit there and go, I really want something to come out of my mouth right now, and somehow it feels really hard. But that's something that you can get through. It really is. When I have trained some students, even in calling quarters, I have had them not just in ritual, but in some of our training, we're going to stand up, we're going to face the quarters, we're going to call quarters now, and they look at me kind of like, I feel so weird. And I'm like, you're going to feel much better when you can deliver that in ritual without feeling as self-conscious or unsure of yourself. And boy, isn't there something about being unsure of yourself that doesn't really deliver well in ritual? Right? None of us feel that's true. We still let ourselves be stuck there sometimes. So I'm here to help you kind of get over the hump of some of that performance, right? The inhibition to speak, to sing, to do things in ritual, because it's a part of who we are as a community. It's a part of who we want to be able to be for our gods. And I think it's a really fun part of it, actually, when you get past that feeling that you can't quite, I don't know what's going to happen if something comes out of my mouth. But you really don't want to be in the position where something doesn't actually come out when, even if somebody else volunteered you, when it's time. So, I was in a group that was based in Connecticut. I was living in Vermont. Wiccan group. We were very eclectic in terms of how we practiced, how we planned ritual, and we were very participatory. So, basically, most of the rituals are designed for everybody to be doing things that contributed to ritual in very material ways. And the plan for this one was we were going to meet at the seaside for a kind of sea priestess, sea goddess ritual. And the one thing that everybody was tasked to bring with them was a piece of poetry, something to say or offer to the ocean while we were there. I was in graduate school at the time, incredibly busy, really focused on studies, and I left to drive down to meet people there that very evening for ritual, realizing I had nothing. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I had about 3.5 hours on the road. And that was a little crucible for me because I was going to arrive, ritual was going to happen, and if I didn't have something, I would feel even worse than that hesitancy in my throat about speaking, because I'd probably be the only one without something to give, without something to offer to the goddess that we were there to honor. So despite my lack of prior preparation, I had some time, some isolation, where I could sing to myself in the privacy of my own car if I could sing at all. And I just started thinking, what do I know about what we're doing? Right? Is there something I can build on? Is there a seed from which something can grow here, even in the short period of time that I have? Sea priestess, sea goddess. The only thing I really had going through my brain to start with was, there's a lady, there's a goddess dressed in blue. That's it. I didn't have a tune. I've never written music. I had never written a song. And I thought I was maybe building a little piece of poetry or something, I don't know. All I had was lady dressed in blue. Lady dressed in blue. And a little repetition as the car was rolling and I had a little bit of momentum really led to a little bit of a cadence. And I had to muck around in there too. Lady dressed in blue. Oh lady, oh something, oh lady. And before I knew it, I was humming a little bit to myself with those words, or toning a little bit of those words with a little bit of rhythm, a little bit of some tones were coming into it. And I had, oh lady dressed in blue. But it built to that, from literally just saying to myself over and over for a while. Lady dressed in blue, oh lady, oh lady, oh lady, oh lady, oh. Trying to find somewhere where that could go. Oh lady dressed in blue. And with a little more work, a couple more lines put themselves together, a few attempts and revisions along the way. I had nothing I could write with onto the steering wheel trying to drive, and on the highway at this point, my little Subaru, which is almost going to drown me out with its small engine trying to keep up a good speed and get me to ritual on time. But I was able to construct from what was an image, right? A very simple image was the seed from which I could build a little bit of something. Enough to have words, enough for repetition to lay down something that suggested a little bit of rhythm and something that I could sing or say. So by the time I arrived, I had a little sea goddess chant that I could offer that I'd never performed for anybody else and didn't exist a couple hours ago. And I can tell you, at least in terms of a tale, how do you do that kind of thing? Well, it isn't something too mysterious, really. Focus, right? Some repetition. Let yourself get comfortable going over something. You can kick yourself along the way if you want, although it may not help a whole lot. But remember to stop kicking yourself and to keep trying and try to express it to yourself, at least in your head, better even out loud, to try it out, to see how it sounds. Because if I wasn't singing to myself in that car, I wouldn't have heard how it sounded, and I wouldn't have been able to put it together the same way. So our imaginations are very powerful, and they can actually even fool ourselves about how something will go. So the doing of it is really important. Right? The expressing and doing of it is very important. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is that sea goddess gene, right, that came to me in the car. So we all gathered together on the shore in Connecticut, drove in from various places, most of them local, not so much for me. And I got out thinking, oh, this is going to go. Never done this before. But we started our ritual literally down on the edge of the sand at the ocean in the dark with a beautiful moon up. And it came around to time to walk forward and make an offering. And it went like this, right? Oh, lady dressed in blue, teach us to listen to your voice. In your currents and your tides, we feel your tears, our faces moist. Oh, lady dressed in blue, with our hearts teach us to heal. In your temple deep and old, under your gaze we pray and kneel. Oh, lady dressed in blue, we come to you for our rebirth. Cleanse our souls and bear us up, that we may do the great work. Oh, lady dressed in blue, teach us to listen to your voice. And that was my beginning. That was where it started, that I had anything I'd ever written and offered in ritual, really of my own creation. And it set a little bit of a tone for me that it was possible to do. Still haven't done it very often, but it's possible to do. And I can tell you that other people in ritual kind of went, because none of them had ever heard me sing, probably, much less in ritual, except for maybe Raina, and maybe not really singing, except in a group where I'm following along just like we all have. That ability, though, is still part of the seed that you have to create songs and chants for ritual. Right? It was a short offering, and I can tell you for ritual purposes, that's good. Most of the things that we love to hear in commercial music are probably too long for ritual sometimes, right? You don't need it to go on and on and on and on, and then have people going, oh my God, wandering off. Oh yeah, it's right, somebody's doing something. You want focus though, right? You want to have it be short enough to carry people, to bring some energy to them, but to not lose them. Now, you heard the beginning of that creation. I only had this image of a lady dressed in blue. I got a little bit of a rhythm and a cadence to what I was saying and repeating over and over to myself. And then I just kept thinking, what else do I know about sea goddesses or sea priestesses? Or how can I picture this? What would I say? Listening to the ocean, right? In your currents and your tides. There's nothing too mysterious about that. We could all picture being at the ocean for that. Right? A lot of times ocean goddesses are seen as ones of deep emotion. And I worked it in with tears. Our faces are moist. We feel also the salt air from the waves, right? There's a lot of little things that seem to fit in that. But not because there is anything really that deep that I knew about sea goddesses, but just because I took the time to think, to express it, and to keep adding parts and trying them out and seeing what worked, right? Rebirth from the ocean came into it as well. So as I sang and as I repeated for my own memorization and as I tried to find what the next line could be and changed a few words so that they fit together well and that it sounded good, I had a piece I could use for that ritual. And I've sung it a few times since, although it was really particular for that. And that's what I'd love to have you all be able to leave here with today. Something that you've been able to create yourself. Something from a seed of something you want to express to one or more of your gods, something about our community, to each other, whatever it may be. And again, the intent isn't that you have to believe it's going to be in a public workshop or ritual. It may be at home, by yourself, where our own self-consciousness won't get the better of us too much. But the only way I got past that point where I couldn't really say anything in ritual because it was so hard almost. It was so hard to even call a quarter. I knew all the words and I kind of still went. It took real effort to get past that constriction in the throat. It was through the doing of it. It was through the doing of it. One of the other opportunities I had to try and do ritual with other people where I was really interested in bringing something new because it wasn't because I wasn't impressed with the stuff I knew about Beltane already, but because I wanted to figure out creation of ritual again from a pretty what do I know about it, what can I do for the people around me type of experience. And there was a group of us that were going to meet on some land north of Lake Okeechobee that we don't have access to anymore. It was a beautiful space for camping and ritual under a bunch of oak trees. We were going to go up there for Beltane, and months before, I'd made the perhaps questionable decision that I would volunteer to help plan and put on ritual as the lead person. And I knew that we were going to have, smaller than this, but probably at least a fire as big as we fit in here normally, without this a raised pit. It was kind of excavated down a little bit. So I kind of knew the layout of the land. I knew what I was dealing with there. But I was just thinking, Beltane, there's a lot of real good juice about Beltane. I mean, it's a very celebratory time of year. The spring is really infusing a lot of us with some excitement. Things, should be outgoing, should be upbeat. There's a lot of sense of celebration and attraction in our traditions, at least, about Beltane. So for that ritual, well, that's what I had to work with. Again, nothing too mysterious, but one of the things that had rattled around in my head for some time was a song I heard I heard it by the Pogues, right? Because it turns out it was a traditional tune, and I loved some of the lyrics. There's a couple of pieces of it that just stuck in my head. That ended up being the seed for the next thing. Because there's a song that they do that turns out, luckily, it's not copyrighted by anybody anymore, that basically goes along the lines of, "Oh, my name is Truckster, I'm a canny young lad and a roving young fellow I've been. So be easy and free when you're drinking with me. I'm a man you don't meet every day." Some of that just stuck in my brain. Like, there's something we can build off of this for ritual. There really is. It's got to be something we can do that could be fun for ritual with this. And I thought I was going to write a summer solstice song off of it for some reason. I really did. But I'm planning Beltane, and I kept looking for something else, because that was going to be a summer solstice song somewhere in the mix of it. I don't know why I had that impression, but I did. But it kept coming back to me. Knocking on my door, going, "Hello!" That tune wouldn't get out of my head when I was planning it. So I finally said, okay, well, I know a few things about Beltane. We're celebrating the height of this couple of things. There's traditions about driving cattle between fires, making love in the woods, and, the cleansing of that big bonfire time, jumping. Awesome, right? I thought about that too. I said, wow, we got a pretty big fire there. Ain't no small shit. But I wanted something to call in the god that was going to really deliver a bit on some of these Beltane themes, some of the things that we really associate with it, to catch people up in it. And they're literally, unlike the first thing I wrote, where there was 7, 8 people maybe, at the most 9, if we all made it probably at the time, there were going to be a small gathering, a little bit different. And really to get people's energy, and to be able to really both invoke the god in this case, and to catch people up a bit in the energy of ritual. You needed something that was going to be a little less quiet. That Sea Priestess chant was good for a small group. Even at the ocean, I had to open up my voice a little bit for that one, because the waves and the sound were going to come over it. But we were dealing with a circle of people that was easily as big around as we had here last night, maybe a little bigger. So I knew it'd have to be something that I could project in a little bit. And the only other piece that I had to go on was this kind of Oak King thing, right? Coming into some of his own this time, looking for perhaps a good time, but he is overseeing this time of year of Beltane, right? He is generous, with everything that he has out onto the world. With the goddess's support, life springs. And I just thought, well, I got to be able to do something with this. And with that tune in my head, I wrote one called King of the Oak. It's a little bit of a Gaelic lilt to it if I do it right. I'm not sure if it'll come out right. I walked around the circle, and I started with my song that I tried first. It was, I am King of the Oak, for whom fires are stoked, and the earth is my bride, the Beltane. So be easy and free when you're thinking of me. I'm a man you don't meet every day. So come fill up your glasses with brandy and wine. Whatever it costs I will pay. So be easy and free when you're drinking with me. I'm a man you don't meet every day. Now let's light up the hills and we'll cure all our ills. May our clans be strengthened today. So be easy and free when you're leaping with me. I'm a man you don't meet every day. In a green wooded space, share a lover's embrace. Bless the land with our passion and say, you'll be easy and free when you're loving with me. I'm a man you don't meet every day. And I can tell you, there were gasps when I turned and ran at the fire. I was similarly adorned, and I think I made it relatively unsinged. But, it was something to plan for, something I needed to focus on. It created the pressure that I had in the car the first time around that I needed to deliver. I really wanted something that could both image-wise and energy-wise get people into that ritual, and even when that ended, to convey something about the God who should be there for that ritual that could really resonate with people. So there's another time around for me in terms of really writing and performing. The one that most people in this community know from my past performances was actually created when I had been invited to participate in Spiraling Heart Coven in Tallahassee. Raina and I were asked to join after we lived in Tallahassee for some years. And we had, for better or worse, convinced our coven that we should be members of COG, of the Covenant of the Goddess. That the coven should join, and at the time there was a local council that covered Georgia and Florida and Alabama, big area. But most of the people in it were in the Atlanta area, and they had one real get-together a year, north of Atlanta. So, even from Tallahassee it was a little bit of a hike. But we knew some other people who were members of COG who had gone up to that gathering, like Serona's mother Bridget, and who had made that trek to be a part of COG. And so we said, well, we'd like our coven to do that as a way to help introduce our coven to that community of people, because we're going to bring a number of folks that didn't know the rest of the people in this at the time, which was the Dogwood Local Council of COG. It still is, just a smaller area now. And we determined that in order to help introduce ourselves to that community, we would offer to do the main ritual. And we had some pretty simple ideas about it, really. We said, what do we want to do? Well, I don't get too fancy. No, certainly don't want to do anything where we might fall on our face. But, we had something that was mostly built around elements. We knew that they had raised stones, or finished raising some stones in their circle, and we brought big pieces of cloth to hang on them with elemental colors, and we were getting ready to do it. And one of our other coveners, Diana, and I had, we volunteered or were volunteered by the group to call the god and goddess. So I contacted the people who own the land where we were going at Starbridge Sanctuary and said, do you have any real god and goddess that you work with here on this land that we could be aware of for use in main ritual? And they said, yeah, actually, we work a lot with Caradwin and with Hearn. Some people know Hearn better than others, but Hearn is a British god who has a lot of similarities to Odin. He started out as something that people believe may have been a historical figure, and his story involves him being a forester of the king to begin with great skills in terms of his hunting of deer. But in the development of his tale, he becomes a sacrificial king in some ways, or a sacrificed god, and he is hung on a tree, after which he lives in a transformed state, where he then, in British lore, has become part of a herald of, harbinger of potentially taken as maybe bad things like somebody dying. Right? He became a god of that crossroads, of that state where somebody might be passing or something really tumultuous might be happening, and he was seen to be basically going across the countryside at times with a pack of hounds called the Wild Hunt. Sometimes you could hear chains and the baying of hounds with him coming. And, I didn't know a whole lot about him at the time, and I still don't know that I really do. When I've talked to people about working with Hearn, I say, my gods, because I work with the Green Man a lot too, are gods with no words. You don't find much written about them. You don't find a lot of things that they've purportedly said. There's not much to go on except what instinct you might have regarding, is this figure, what do they mean? But almost everybody has some idea, if you've been in paganism a little while, about what the Wild Hunt might conjure up as a kind of feeling or as a phrase of hounds with potentially a rider or runner going across the land, chasing or being chased and engaging in this, really energetic type of chase, I guess is the best word. And we had planned for Spiraling Heart to have a walk through the ritual. There might have been really one or two, if I remember right, Coral. At the most 2 times we were going to get together to kind of do this kind of ritual walkthrough. How's it going to go? And that again became the point at which I had to focus and try and say, what was I going to do? Because I didn't really want to go to the walkthrough and be like, okay, this is the part where I invoke Hearn. Okay, let's move on to whatever we're doing. So I kind of took the opportunity to, during some of my commutes, again, actually, car is a great place for this sometimes, if you know the route at least, don't get too distracted, to kind of just go over things. But I started very much like I did with the sea goddess. I have a name, Hearn, but it intones well, right? Hearn, like a, it's got a little bit to it there. But I really wasn't sure what was I going to do besides that. What do I know about Hearn? He's associated with forests, with deer. It's often depicted in some of the visual media about him as being a horned god now himself. That there's this pack that, well, what do I think of when I think of deer? I think of things, well, you don't really necessarily hear them or see them very easily. You may feel the presence. You might be able to smell them if you're in the right direction. And so I just had a couple of little things to work with, right? Nothing too much. And mostly out of that repetitiveness again of working with some tone, with expressing it out loud, and thinking through what symbology did I know about the subject I was trying to address. I came up with an invocation to do. And we were gathered at Adrian's house in her backyard because it was big enough for us to all kind of walk around in the layout we wanted for ritual parts. And we came up to the point where, okay, we've all done all the setup, time to invoke the god. And so I did my best to deliver what I'd written, and when I got to the end of it, Diana was standing next to me, and she went, "Oh shit, I've got some work to do." Fortunately, she is much more of a performer than I am. She actually performs regularly for the Mickey Faust. There's a performance troupe in Tallahassee that she has worked with for years and years. So when we went up to the Starbridge Sanctuary and put on ritual in this, what was really a really interesting place. It's kind of a little bit of a natural amphitheater set in the side of this hill. So I knew that if I could open up my voice a little bit, you could really hear, even amongst, say, apparently it's going to be like 70, 80 people there. And then it was probably one of the bigger risks I've taken in terms of performance. And I can tell you, if you ever worry that, I don't feel like I'm getting over that performance thing, I felt nervous as shit. Even after doing a dry run where Diana went like this, and I went, "Oh, good." Okay, like that. Being there with a full group of people around you, even with the momentum of ritual, it was challenging as hell to stand up and do basically what turns out it's like solo performance, right? That part of it really isn't easy. You are putting yourself out there. But the chant I came up with is one that I've been able to use for a number of other, performances or ceremonies, and I guess it's been well received because a couple of people even said, "Can you record that as an invocation?" So I'll try and do it for you.
Yeah.
I can try. I don't know if you're going to get a very good... Yeah, don't sit on it. I don't know how good it'll come out at all.
I have
But
it.
the only other piece I had to work with in this, besides the kind of sound to begin with, and the imagery that I had, was I got really curious. I've had a long time affinity with elk. I have a little bit of an elkish shaped body and something like that. Big legs, a little bit of a tummy, and like that. And when I was younger, I ran. My knees are a little old now for it, but I used to do some decent distance running. And I kind of felt an affinity with deer in the woods and things, like running and moving and stuff. So I went on the internet. I knew there was internet by that time. And I kind of researched, like, well, what does an elk sound like? And you got these really interesting, kind of haunting calls that I heard recorded. This, sound of elk calling is kind of like... And I was just like, I don't know if I can work that in. Not sure about that, but my curiosity had led me there for some reason. So the first time I performed it, I didn't use that. But the next time I did, when I was back in Okeechobee, for the ritual, I did. I started out with elk calls for that sound. So I did 3 of them before I led into the rest of this invocation. So it starts out like this. Come in the quiet morning light, we feel your presence distance out of sight. Come, the sun has fully rose, your musky scent does fill our noses. Come, the daytime now is done, proud antlers hold the setting sun. Come, the moon is on the rise, the herd and pack go thundering by, of blood and life and death and all, of hoof and antler, bone and call. The wild hunt shall take us all. Hern, hern, hern. It's a little flatter than it came out with. In the amphitheater up in Georgia when we started, I had some antlers that I didn't really have affixed on my head. Didn't really have that type of preparation, I guess, to have them really be a helmet or anything. But I held it up in the air, stomped my foot on to begin with. People started stomping a little along with it and everything. So by the time we got to the hern, 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 everybody was already with it, right? They were ready to go. They may not have heard from Jack, nothing. But everybody was already going along with this invocation, right? And if you can bring that type of energy to a circle, and if you can raise your voice to honor your gods in that kind of manner, you're going to get the result that you hope for. You just have to get over ourselves, get ourselves out of the way a little bit. Right? So those are some of the pieces that I've written over time, and there's not much else I've written, only a few. But if there's a tale associated with us other than getting you to the practical part now, trying it yourself, it's that if I can do it, anybody can actually do it. I don't have a trained voice. I never studied with anybody on how to sing. I don't even do it all that very well. It's all scratchy and stuff. And sometimes I can find appropriate pieces that fit with that. The Sea Priestess one, I had to smooth it out a little. I don't want to have a rough and raspy voice for a sea goddess chant exactly. And it fits with the so better, So, when I get down to the wild hunt shall take, it's fine to have that be raspy, right? So, you may need to be aware of your own tendencies, but we all have the tools that we need to do it. We're all born with the voice. At least everybody here I know of. And the ones that don't could still create something anyway, to go over in their head or to offer, quietly in the privacy of your own home. So, but I am an actual example of anybody can do it. Because when I first stepped into Circle, as I started telling you earlier, I had trouble saying words, words that I knew, much less taking something that I, wanted to create and bringing it into ritual being. The quick review is, right, you can find something to build on. You can find an image. You can find a song you already know that has caught you in some ways. You can use repetition and focus to build, staying on it, and doing that, just sticking with it was what it took. But I want to, thank you for coming to Turning the Tides and being a part of our community here. And I hope that the festival is something that can offer you what it offered us, which is a nice sense of our community and what we have to offer each other.
As we're coming to the end of the show, we'd just like to tell you that we appreciate your listening and we would like to have some feedback. So please email us at em@cog.org and tell us what you like. If there's anything that you want to hear, other episodes or segments that we've done in the past that you'd like to hear more of, things like that. Remember, it's em at cog.org. Really easy to remember. Now enjoy Aradia's song.
Mother of the corn, mother of the grain, mother of us all, certain as the rain, I know you love me. Mother of the corn, mother of the grain, mother of us all, certain as the rain, I know you love me. Granny, Granny, patient and wise, Granny, Granny, open my eyes to know your power. Granny, Granny, patient and wise, Granny, Granny, open my eyes to know your power. Maiden, child of my heart, know I love you. Mother of the corn, mother of the grain, mother of us all, certain as the rain, I know you love me. Granny, Granny, patient and wise, Granny, Granny, open my eyes to know your power. Maiden, child of my heart, know I love her. certain as the rain. I'm ready, patient and wise, ready,